The message came at 6:12 a.m. No greeting, no apology, just her words. After all I put up with, I deserve this. I couldn't move. A ventilator hissed beside my head. My jaw was strapped, my lungs borrowed from the machine. The nurse hovered quietly, holding a tablet. She left this, he said, and tapped the screen. 2 first-class tickets to Paris. Her name. Another man's, Laurent, something. I fell sweet. Spa package. Departure in 48 hours. Our joint account paid for it. The same account that covered payroll, groceries, property taxes. Now it held $11.42. My hands were strapped, but my thumb could still press one button. The nurse sent it without a word. Clara had waited. She timed it perfectly. 3 days, into my medically induced coma. 2 days after the doctors told her the odds weren't great. She didn't come see me. She booked a vacation. She didn't say goodbye. She sent a message. The nurse left. The room returned to its usual sounds. Drip. Beep. Air. They'd shaved my chest for the ECG leads. My skin was gray. There was a mirror angled above the bed. I barely recognized the man in it. My name is Arthur Whitmore. 48, structural diagnostics consultant. We inspect what holds things. Bridges, towers, industrial foundations. I own a small firm in upstate New York. We don't advertise. We're just the number people call when something critical starts to sag. Jonas was the first employee I ever hired. Bright, loyal, steady hands. He sent me a get well message the day after I went under. Said the crew was keeping things afloat. Clara told them I was too fragile for visitors. Said she'd handle everything. She did. She closed our office bank account, redirected client inquiries to a temporary address. Left the team in the dark. I only found that out later. That morning I had no way to know. Just the oxygen tube. And her words. After all I put up with. 14 years of marriage. 11 of those with me building our life from the ground up. She used to call my work honest. Said I had integrity. That I made her feel safe. I guess safe got boring. The ICU ceiling was white panels backlit. Nothing to look at. So I counted the seams. 12 across. 8 down. The kind of ceiling you only see when you've got nothing left to give. They didn't expect me to wake up that week. Or ever, really. She didn't either. That's why she sent the message. Why she used my card. Why she thought she could leave clean. She assumed the man lying there was already gone. Just a breathing machine with a name tag. But I was awake. Not fully, not loudly, quietly. And in that quiet, something formed. Not anger, not grief. Something colder, sharper. She wanted Paris. She wanted freedom. She wanted the last word. She got none of it. Jonas used to call me the blueprint guy. Not to my face, he wasn't that casual. But I heard it once when he thought I was out of earshot. I took it as a compliment. I ran my firm like I ran my life. Measured, clean, reinforced. We didn't do volume. We did precision. We worked out of a modest converted warehouse in Albany. Clients brought us in when something didn't feel right. A shift in load, a subtle buckle, a sound in the steel that hadn't been there before. We never advertised. Word of mouth was enough. Jonas had been with me 5 years. Graduated top of his class, skipped bigger offers. Said he wanted to learn how to think structurally, not just follow code. I taught him everything I could. Not because I had to, because I saw something in him. Patience, loyalty, silence, qualities no resume could list. Clara never liked the office. Too dusty, too cold. She called it your cave. She preferred the light. She was a conservationist, artwork, frescoes, church interiors from the 1800s, restoration, but on canvas instead of concrete. Elegant hands, measured steps, a way of speaking that made people lean in, even when she wasn't saying much. We met at a preservation conference in Montreal. She was speaking on pigment fidelity in 19th century oil painting. I was presenting on subfloor stress in Gothic cathedrals. Afterward, we drank whiskey in the hotel bar. She said she liked how I never interrupted her. I liked how she made silence feel like part of the conversation. We married 2 years later. Small ceremony. No band. Just a few friends and her cousin playing cello. She wore gray instead of white. Said white was too obvious. For a while we were good. She'd rest her head on my shoulder while I marked reports. I'd watch her photograph brushstrokes. On murals like they held secrets. We didn't need a lot, just quiet. Shared work and strong coffee. But over time, things shifted. Not dramatically. More like slow erosion. A beam that flexes an inch at a time until no one remembers where it started. There was a night I remember clearly. She was preparing to present at the Hudson Arts Preservation Awards, her first nomination. I stayed up late formatting slides, editing her speech, even fixing a warped visual on her projector. Didn't say much. Just worked beside her. When I handed her the clicker, she didn't smile. She looked at the screen and said, "It's not exactly how I'd do it, but it'll pass. No thank you. No warmth." That night, after the event, she hugged a curator, a second too long. On the drive home, she didn't mention the speech at all. Just stared out the window and said, "You know, sometimes I think you were meant for infrastructure, not people." It wasn't cruel, but it stuck. I started working later hours. Jonas did too. We didn't say it, but we both knew. Work was easier than home. The last night I remember clearly was a Thursday, cold, with wind pushing against the windows. I made pasta. She barely touched it, said she had to prep for a call with a French partner. A curator, Laurent. She went to bed before I did. Didn't say goodnight. Didn't look back. The next morning, I coughed blood into the bathroom sink. Just a drop. Dark. Heavy. It disappeared down the drain before I could register it. I rinsed my mouth, put on a clean shirt, and went to work. They discharged me on a Monday. No welcome home sign. No flowers, just a release form and a packet of antibiotics. I stepped into our house the way you enter a building after a storm. Carefully, unsure what still stood. The door code had been changed. Jonas met me in the driveway with the spare key. He didn't say much, just handed it over and nodded. I hadn't seen him in over a month. He looked tired. Inside, the house was clean. Too clean. No clutter. No warmth. No coffee mugs. No books. My side of the closet was empty. Drawers open. Socks gone. Even the wooden box where I kept my mother's wedding ring. Vanished. The walls still had art, but not ours. Not the photographs we'd picked in Montreal. These were new. Abstract. Cold. Framed like a gallery. I walked room by room. Slow. The kind of slow that comes from both injury and dread. The office was locked. She never used that room. I forced the door open with a shoulder push and found it stripped. Hard drives gone, blueprints missing, even the old Rolodex I kept out of habit. Empty. Sat in the corner, lowered myself carefully, and stared at the carpet. There was a pale square where the file cabinet used to be. That square hit harder than anything else. That file cabinet held every drawing I'd ever done by hand. Pencil on vellum. The kind of work you keep even after the world goes digital. Gone, I checked the bookshelf in the hallway. 1 volume left. Structural Dynamics of Heritage Foundations. She knew it was my first published work. I pulled it down. Inside the cover, the page where I'd inscribed her name. Torn out. It wasn't just theft. It was erasure. My chest tightened. Not from the infection. From the weight of knowing I had been archived, categorized. Deleted. I opened the fridge. Empty, except for almond milk and a half bottle of white wine. She never drank white. The mail on the counter was all hers. Fashion catalogs. Gallery invites. A glossy envelope from the Whitmore DuPont. Foundation for Cultural Restoration. My name. Tied to a stranger's rebranded. I opened the envelope. It was a donor announcement. Photos of Clara and Laurent smiling beside a city councilwoman. Clara holding one of my original reports. Reformatted, rebranded, but unmistakably mine. No credit, no footnote. She hadn't just left, she'd repackaged me. I stepped outside. Jonas was still there, leaning against his old Civic. He didn't ask what I'd found. Didn't need to. She told the crew you weren't coming back, he said. Told. Clients we'd shut down for good. What'd you do? He looked down. Packed up what I could, saved your notes, the ones on paper. I nodded. You still have them? In my garage. Didn't feel right throwing them away. Thanks. He paused. She also canceled the health insurance retroactively. I exhaled through my nose. That explained the $14,000 bill waiting in my inbox. That night, I sat at my old workbench, plugged in a backup laptop, tried to open CAD software. License expired. Her card had been removed. Mine had been canceled. I tried sketching by hand. Felt good for 5 minutes. Then the shaking started. Residual nerve damage. I dropped the pencil. Let it roll to the floor. I reached for my phone. Found her name still in my contacts. Thumb hovered. Not. To call just to see if she'd changed it. I held the screen for a moment, then deleted the entry. No hesitation. No ceremony. Just a clean line erased. I didn't scream. Didn't call lawyers. Didn't post anything. That's not how I'm built. Study structures. Stress points. The weight a system can carry before it fails. This wasn't any different. Started with the hard drive Jonas saved. Scanned every report I'd written in the past 3 years. Cross-referenced dates. There were annotations in someone else's hand. Edited versions with Clara's name inserted. She hadn't just copied my work. She'd altered it. Next, I pulled the permits. Every structural restoration project needs stamped reports, and those stamps have registration numbers. Mine. They were all there, on documents filed after I went into the ICU. One report had my digital signature attached to it, but I never opened the file. I checked the metadata. Time-stamped 2 days after my collapse. Clara didn't forge my name. She used my credentials, exactly as they were, because she had access to everything. Bank logins, .cloud storage, .e-signature tools. She hadn't just erased me, she had puppeted me. Jonas helped dig. He stayed late, combing through emails, comparing PDFs, checking ID logs. She submitted a funding proposal last month, he said one night. Using your name as co-founder, it got approved, government-backed. How much? $280,000 cultural preservation grant. I didn't blink, didn't shift, just nodded. She listed Laurent as technical director and herself as primary consultant. What about me? Jonas held up the document. Your name was there, in memoriam. I let that settle. She'd declared me dead. On paper. That weekend I drove to the office of an old friend, Mason Phelps, compliance investigator. Retired military. Sharp eyes, no small talk. I laid out the evidence. He listened. Read. Didn't ask unnecessary questions. After a long pause, he said, You want exposure or leverage? Neither, I said. I want precision. We built a dossier, time-stamped evidence, metadata trails, bank records, screenshots of her public statements claiming authorship of my work. She'd done interviews, podcasts, articles about building from loss. Framing herself as the visionary widow who turned tragedy into art, she spoke gently, elegantly, with a sadness rehearsed just enough to be believable. In one podcast, she said, Arthur taught me how to build things. I'm just continuing. The work. She wore black, smiled with restraint. Used my firm's old slogan. I copied every clip, filed it all. Jonas flagged an email thread with a former client. Mrs. Keller, an elderly woman whose family chapel Clara had once consulted on. She redirected the restoration contract to Laurent, Jonas said, and tripled the price. Mrs. Keller wrote back, I trusted Arthur. I don't know this man. That line stayed with me. We added it to the dossier. Then I made my move. A city council in Providence had approved her next project, a federal building retrofit. Jonas and I submitted a request for audit, Using a technical clause buried in the contract terms, any report involving public safety had to be personally certified by the engineer of record. That was me, and I hadn't certified anything. They flagged it immediately. Paused funding. Opened. A review. Clara called the city, tried to explain it was a misunderstanding, said I had signed before I got sick. But one of the attached reports had a timestamp that made that impossible. 2 days later, I got an email. Subject: "We need to talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I watched the news. An article dropped in a preservation journal. Questions raised over legitimacy of Whitmore DuPont Foundation claims. It wasn't a scandal. Not yet. But it was a crack, the kind of crack I know how to widen. The hearing wasn't public, just a closed-door review with federal auditors, city legal counsel, and 2 engineers, one of whom knew my name before I said it. Mason had set the table. All I had to do was hand them the file. They read in silence. 26 pages, no commentary. When they reached the metadata appendix, one of them leaned back and exhaled sharply through his nose. That was the first sound in 20 minutes. "She claimed you certified this yourself?" one asked. I nodded. "While sedated?" I nodded again. "She submitted false documentation, forged timestamps, and used federal funds on ineligible expenditures," Mason said, calm as always. "We have bank records, IP logs, and verified timestamps from the hosting server." The lead auditor glanced at me. "What outcome are you seeking, Mr. Whitmore?" I looked at the ceiling. Same kind of panels as the ICU square. Silent. Then back at him. "I'm not asking you to punish her," I said. "I just want the truth to be on record, and her hands off anything with my name on it." They agreed. Within 48 hours, the Providence project was terminated, all pending funds frozen. An official statement issued. Certification fraud. Contract void. I didn't call Clara. Didn't need to, but I went to the airport, just once. She was easy to spot. Expensive. Luggage. Confident stride. She moved like someone about to be congratulated. Laurent wasn't there. Just her. She didn't see me. Didn't know I was 10 steps behind, watching her scan the boarding pass. Then the agent tapped her shoulder. Showed her a document. Spoke. Low, she froze. Her smile didn't fall. It evaporated like steam from glass. She was escorted out of line. Quiet. No handcuffs. No scene. But she never got on that plane. I drove home slowly. No music. In the silence, I imagined the other versions. Me calling every journalist she'd ever charmed, sending videos, emails, evidence to her sponsors, publishing the real story in my own voice. I imagined the fallout, the panic, the begging, the headlines. Then I discarded them one by one, like blueprints for a structure I no longer needed to build. She showed up at my office 3 days later. No appointment, no warning, just walked in like she still had keys. I was at my desk. Jonas was in the back organizing archived reports. She looked thinner, tired, still composed, but with an edge of something new, desperation. "You could have handled this privately," she said. Her voice didn't rise. Still smooth, like we were in a gallery arguing about lighting. I looked at her, really looked, and then I stood, walked to the window, watched the wind push the leaves around the loading dock. "I knew where you'd be," I said. "I knew what to say to destroy you completely, publicly. I knew how to burn everything to the ground." I turned to face her, but I didn't. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I kept going. I chose something sharper than revenge. Her eyes narrowed. "What?" "Documentation." She didn't reply. I picked up the envelope on my desk, slid it across the table. Inside, a notarized agreement, pre-drafted, airtight. It released all claims to my name, my firm, my work, my past reports. Required her to remove me from every mention, every site, every narrative. In exchange, I wouldn't press charges, wouldn't speak to the press, wouldn't pursue recovery of the funds. "You sign that," I said. And we're done. She looked at the paper like it was written in another language. I don't owe you this. I didn't answer. She stared at me for a long time, then picked up the pen. Signed, left without another word. When the door clicked shut, Jonas stepped out. You sure about letting her walk? He asked. I nodded. She thought she won when I was unconscious, I said. She thought winning meant taking what I built. Jonas waited. But real builders, I added, we can start over, as many times as it takes. He nodded. Didn't say anything else, just went back to his work. And so did I. 6 months later, I was back on site. Not a city job, a rural rail bridge west of Saratoga. Abandoned for decades, heavy steel, frost-damaged beams. Quiet. The kind of job no one competes for, but it's the kind I like. No one talks. The work does. I wake before the sun, brew coffee in a dented thermos I've had since '09, check the ledger, check the sky, then start. Jonas works with me now full-time. No job titles, no company website. Just the nameplate on the toolbox. W&H Structural. We never said what the H stood for. We didn't have to. Clients call by referral. They show up quietly. Leave with a promise. If something matters, we'll keep it standing. There's a new shelf in my truck. Holds only what I trust. Blueprints, torque tools, and one envelope. Still sealed. Her agreement. Her signature. Her silence. I never opened it again. I didn't keep the money. Didn't sell my story. Didn't return to the house. Some things you reinforce. Others you let fall. One morning, I closed up a toolbox and opened a crate we'd left unpacked for months. Inside, a small metal sculpture warped, the one she'd once promised to keep forever. I placed it in a cardboard box, labeled it in marker, Clara, closed, taped it shut, slid it onto the top shelf, far in the back. A new intern came by later that week, first day. Quiet kid. Watched me finish welding a final beam into place. He didn't speak much, but before leaving he said, You really built all this yourself? I wiped the soot from my gloves, looked at the bridge, then at him. No, I said. But I rebuilt what mattered. That night I sat on the tailgate of my truck. Watched the river move below. Felt the wind press against my back like an old friend. She left chasing legacy. I stayed and built what endures. The gentleman's revenge isn't loud, but it's always personal. If this felt personal, make it personal. Subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story.